And thanks to Stephen from AK Press for reading Too Drunk to Fuck in school to his teacher and class. That took some nerve and inspiration. I mean, it reminded me when in 8th grade speech class, we were supposed to read a poem to the class, and I read Dead Babies to the Alice Cooper, lyrics to the Alice Cooper song. And the speech and drama teacher was a little guy named Van who grew up in Oxford, Mississippi, and was a fundamentalist Christian to the core, but wow, that's pretty good. I like that. He liked horror as well. So then, long story short, it led to me getting the Boris Karloff role in Arsenic and Old Lace. But anyway, to fast forward, considering who's here and why you came here, does anybody really want to sit through another discussion of what punk rock is? Normally I'm like, no! I'm not going to write a book of punk rock. I don't want to be in these things. But I was wildly to PM Press and knowing I was going to go see the Membranes anyway, because I've never been able to see the Membranes after grooving all those cool records all these years. I thought, yeah, I'm going to show up and do this one. So thanks again for having me. So, what is punk? I mean, I guess it's like that Supreme Court justice in the early 60s porno ruling who said, I can't know what it is, something like that, but I can't put it in words, but I know it when I see it, know it when I hear it, or for that matter, we all know it when we feel it, don't we? I mean, one thing I might be taking issue with John, I'm not sure, is that I've never viewed punk as a movement. I mean, to me, when I think of movements, I think of political movements, eyes on the prize. I mean, the Martin Luther King I Have a Dream speech, that was a march for jobs, actually. And less job discrimination, which was part of an anti-racist, non-discrimination, equality movement. And so, if punk is a movement, what is the prize at the end? More punk? I mean, I don't think we're in any danger of the spigot being turned off anytime soon. I mean, in some ways, I kind of wish punk would die for a while so it could be reborn. But, no, I mean, it's not a movement, it's more of it's a culture, a rebel culture that played huge roles in the lives of everybody on this panel, and who knows, maybe saving me from the one that Tipper Gore and crew blamed the teen suicide on rock music. I have no idea, but, it definitely helped turn things around in that regard for me. But, punk has been an inspirational spirit and and to fight against racism and, from the Crass Camp and then later MPC and many others for vegetarianism, animal rights, anti-nuclear. When I was doing work up north with Earth First and it seemed like a bunch of deadheads in a way, I noticed these faded skulls with mohawk tattoos on some of the marchers and stuff. And I was like, yeah, this is kind of the spirit of punk, isn't it? I mean, one of those punk people I've ever known is Winston Smith, who's done so much of the art for even the DK logo on the Fresh Fruit book and everything else, and he don't look like no punk. Now his beard is white and he kind of looks like an old hippie, which in many ways he was, although very schooled in Dadaism, but very, again, punk in spirit. But that said, with punk as life-changing inspiration and definitely helping keep the energy and the blood going for many, many actual movements, and as far as trying to keep the Bay Area someplace people want to be, okay, we lost on nailing Airbnb in San Francisco and the condos in the Mission, but that doesn't mean we've lost forever. The anti-gentrification movement will be back with more ballot initiatives next time. And one of these times, maybe they will pass. You gotta keep working on these things. But as far as culture goes, I mean, yeah, kind of like what everybody else in the panel is saying, punk, what a breath of fresh air when it happened. I mean, the mid-70s, when Penelope and I and Nick was a little older, Dazed and confused, we were disgusted. We missed the 60s, all that fire, all that fun, and now look what we're getting instead. The Eagles, disco, arena rock. And even though I had my long hippie hair because I thought it was rebellious and freaked people out, and I was like, oh no, that's too negative, you know, you gotta learn to be more mellow. Mellow drones everywhere and stuff. I mean, granted, this was partly warped because I grew up in Boulder, Colorado, which is overrun with mellow drones to this day. You can't walk 2 blocks without running into a wellness center that only the current homeowners in Boulder, where the property is as bad as in San Francisco, can even afford. But anyway, you know, it really was a cultural desert. And I decided pretty early on, you know, to be one of them black t-shirt hippies and not the mellodrome kind, shall we say. And from when I first heard rock and roll in 1965 as a second grader, when Beatlemania and the 60s garage era was in full swing, I'm so grateful I got to experience 60s punk as it was happening. And local bands could still get on the radio, and I quickly went for the hard stuff. Beatles, okay, everybody else knows them, so I kind of identify with them. Much more to early Rolling Stones, Paul Revere and the Raiders, who were much more influential than people give them credit for. Music Machine, the one-hit wonders like local ones like Moonrakers and the Astronauts in the Denver area, and much more. And then from there, later Steppenwolf, Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath. And by then, I blundered into this critic in the Denver, who wrote every Sunday in the Denver Post. He wrote these capsule reviews of records. And he did an entire column trashing one of my big favorites because he annoyed and scared people in ways that I still like to do. It was Alice Cooper, you know, Dead Babies and all that. What's wrong with him? He could probably write pretty ballads. Who is this guy? But I couldn't find out about music except on FM radio. I didn't know about used record stores yet. And so then, a little bit later, here comes some capsule reviews. Black Sabbath is almost as bad as the MC5. And immediately I was looking for MC5 albums the next day, and by then I had discovered the used record store and found an MC5 album for 50 cents, and life began to improve. And then I somehow got access to one Rolling Stone, and it was the week Raw Power came out. So there was a big ad and a review, The Egg. Nobody does it better. Nobody does it worse. In fact, nobody does it at all. But what is it? And so I chanced a Stooges album. Eventually, because this was Colorado was a national testing ground for the next Eagles, the next Firefall, and then if you don't have that, we'll give you Scientology Jazz Fusion. It meant that cool stuff was in the Trade Tape and Records free box every day, 2 blocks from my high school. And then one day somebody dumps his collection, Funhouse, sealed for a dime. You know, I was kind of like, you know, it was lonely at the same time though. And then when there was no more Stooges and, you know, it looked like Hawkwind was dying, another big favorite, everything was just kind of getting worse and worse. What's going to happen now? It's all adult rock, soft rock. You know, finally Black Sabbath comes to Denver and they dim the whole Coliseum. Arena rock was all I knew. Ladies and gentlemen, the future of rock and roll. Heart. Me and my friend Sam just buried our head in our hands and groaned. And then within months, punk hit and the Ramones hit Denver. And it was way more powerful than I thought it was going to be and way cooler. It was like, whoa, this is so good, but anybody could do this. I could do this. I think I will do this. And that was what they were doing to bands all over the country. There wasn't the tradition that I think John was talking about of listening to Slade and a lot of glam because they didn't have big hits over here. I mean, that's a major reason for the difference in sound. A lot of early bands like Sham 69 to me was the logical, was the next thing inspired by Slade, the sing-along choruses, the soccer chants. We didn't have that, but in America it was much more, further below ground. where a lot of Lonely Stooges fans, like myself, began moving to larger cities and meeting up with other Lonely Stooges fans and Velvet Underground fans, and in case of one strain of the disease that I was part of, Captain Beefheart fans. And, you know, we began starting bands because we could. You know, you didn't have to, like, try in a closet alone to play guitar as good as Jimmy Buffett in order to be in a band. You could just be in a band. I mean, the first time I went to the Mabuhay, you know, just as a college student at UC Santa Cruz, my hair was still long, all that good stuff. Me and my friend Mike Ellis went to Heavy Metal Night by mistake. And that kind of defined, we got Pegasus and Atla and whatnot. And it really kind of helped shatter my feeling that I could like it all at the same time. And it was like, there's some of this has got to be fucking purged right now. But then there was this guy, oh my God, it's a punk rocker. You know, suit, then a skinny tie, which is part of punk, then an old suit and whatnot. And he was like, with the Pegasus and really pissing the band and a lot of the fans off. And my friend Mike said, wait a minute, I think I know that guy. And he goes over and talks to him and says, yeah, it's my friend Russell at this high school for Americans in England we went to, only now he's changed his name to Will Shatter. And he says there's a real punk show tomorrow night at this little space. It was 8th and Howard, and it was the Avengers in Grand Mall, if you remember that show. The one where there's a photo on the back of James Stark's book of old punk photos of either you or Grand Mall playing, and then me and Michael Belfer, both with long, from the Sleepers, both with long hair and ponytails, in the audience. And that was when things really began to move, like, oh man, says, well, you in a band? No, I can't really play anything very well. Not a band. Oh no, don't worry about it, man. I've been playing bass for 2 days and I'm in a band. We're playing tomorrow night. And sure enough, Grand Mall sounded like the bass player had been playing for 2 days. But it was one of those life-changing experiences they talk about. What made punk so fresh for me too was it was the really hard, harsh music I'd been missing and wanted more of, and suddenly everybody was doing it again. And even, you talk about pub rock bands and things like that coming in. Basically what punk reignited against the wishes of major labels worldwide was it brought back the spirit of rock and roll. You know, even like the poppy things, the Elvis Costellos, the Blondies, whatever, it was rock and roll again. And at that point, punk and new wave were interchangeable terms. The Pistols and Ramones were new wave, Blondie was punk, and it was basically, as Penelope said, in the local scene here, the peer pressure was not all bands must sound the same, and sorry Tony Kinman, I was not responsible for that part of it later. I was, you know, we would put the Butthole Surfers or Meat Puppets or Nod or whoever else on Dead Kennedys bills to try and wake up hardcore audiences, etc. And there was Nazi Punk's Fuck Off to show we stood. That's another part of the story. But yeah, it was all this different stuff. Survival Research Labs was punk, or it was new wave. But when I finally moved to San Francisco for good, and maybe last day of February '78 or something, thus missing the Pistols last show, unfortunately. But there was already a schism when the major labels kind of let it be known we're not going to sign any more punk bands. Dickies were the last one. And rumor had it that one of them had an uncle in A&M, or they would have been signed either. And suddenly, you know, there was suddenly going to be a difference. Punk is the stuff we're not going to touch. It's too harsh. It's too negative. And new wave, yeah, put that skinny tie back on, get a pink jacket, and sing about the radio and my Sharona, and maybe we'll give you a deal. But by then, the toothpaste was out of the tube. We didn't need major labels' rules anymore. People could make their own stuff, sound the way they wanted to. And thankfully, as far as culture and inspiration and what it has done for some movements, I'll end it here for now. We've never looked back, have we?
And did you get